Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. Hope you are well. So, the big day today, it is Liberation Day, and the Trump tariffs have been announced. There is a lot to go over. So, let's start by going right over to CNBC, where they've got a live stream, a live feed as to what is happening. And I think Trump's like holding up this sign as exactly what he did. And then we can go through the details, and then we can try to connect some dots and think about how this may impact the United States economy and the global economy. Okay, first thing, the live updates. Trump to impose higher than expected tariffs. Market drops. You don't say. And we're going to go over, oh my gosh. Okay, so now they're down 900 points. Spoiler alert. They were down 700 points. Well, we're going to have to get into that. I don't know if that's accurate. We're going to have to get into that in just a moment. But first, what you need to know. President Donald Trump signed an aggressive and far-reaching reciprocal tariff policy at the White House. And, oh, by the way, they renamed today. It's no longer Liberation Day. Was it Make America Rich Again Day? He named it something else. We'll see. I'm sure one of these stories that we're going to go over will give us the lowdown on the new name for April 2nd. Okay. Trump said his plan will set a 10% baseline tariff across the board. The plan imposes steep tariff rates on many countries, including 34% on China. Right, but that's on top of the 20%. So that would be a 54% on China. 20% on EU, 46% on Vietnam, and 32% on Taiwan. I wonder how they come up with 46%. Like, is that somehow the tariffs that Vietnam has on our goods, or are they just kind of throwing it out there and seeing what sticks? I don't know. The White House clarified to CNBC exactly what we're talking about, that the overall Chinese tariffs have gone to 54%. Trump has previously announced tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico, and on specific industries, including a 25% duty on auto imports. Stocks fell sharply. I am very curious to see what happens in markets tomorrow. Not only did the futures market tumble, but the 10-year Treasury was down, I think, like 8, 9, 10 basis points again on this news. And as you guys know from watching my videos, I like to pay more attention to the bond market than I do the stock market. Pharmaceuticals will not be subject to reciprocal tariffs. You see, so this is one of the problems I have, that are we really trying to bring manufacturing back to, the argument here is that we're too dependent on China for all of these things that are absolutely necessary to the US economy or to society at large. And the cerveza sickness showed us just how vulnerable we are. Okay, so why are we not putting tariffs on pharmaceuticals, but yet we're putting them on Nikes made in Vietnam? I mean, I guess maybe there's an argument that pharmaceuticals are just too important to disrupt that supply chain, where tennis shoes not as important. My rebuttal there would be, okay, well, how are we going to bring how are we going to bring the pharmaceutical manufacturing back to the United States if we don't disrupt the supply chain, if you think that's what we need to do? It's just one of the things Trump has done some great things, and I'll give him credit where credit is due. But one thing I get very frustrated with is just the inconsistency, not just him waking up one day and saying one thing and the next day the next, but the inconsistency in his policies, not just the inconsistency with the policy and the rhetoric, but also the inconsistency within the policies themselves. Iowa Governor Reynolds working to ease short-term impact of tariffs. I don't know what she can do about it. Okay, we got the oh, now this is interesting. So this is the tariff on China is effective as of April 9th. So, okay, I guess that these tariffs aren't all effective today. And why not? When are they effective? Let's actually look that up because that's really important. Trump, I wouldn't put it past him to come out and announce all these tariffs and then say, well, we'll go ahead and determine when they're effective. And, again, maybe using that as a negotiating tactic. So let me see if I can find out real quick. New Trump tariff. Okay, higher than expected. We got that. Trump announced new tariffs today. Okay, what he calls Liberation Day. Got it. Trump's sweeping. Okay. Maybe let's get into zero hedge because I want to go over. They usually have a little bit more detailed in the mainstream media. So let me make sure we're done here, which I think we are. Yeah, let's go over to zero hedge, see if we can get some more details. Okay, futures tumble as President Trump delivers declaration of that's what it was. The Declaration of Economic Independence. I love it. I love it. Now, okay, so maybe they didn't change the name of the day, but they gave it an official declaration. All right. So according to Zero Hedge, we will have some very, very good news today. Trump. You can love him or you can hate him. But the one thing you cannot accuse him of is not being entertaining. That I will give it to him all. He is one of the most entertaining human beings I have ever seen in my life. I don't know that's good for a president, but boy, oh boy, he has got a knack. He really does. Okay, April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day. I don't know if I can get through this without laughing. Okay, I guess this is a quote from Trump. Will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn. The day America's destiny, was reclaimed. And the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We'll see. I mean, the good thing is the results will be quantifiable. We'll be able to tell with GDP. We'll be able to tell with the trade deficit. There are a lot of different data points and metrics that we will be able to look at and definitively say this has worked on net balance, or this has been a positive on net balance, or a negative on net balance. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by the nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. America's steelworkers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen. We have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. Yeah, they did, but I don't know that it was as much to do with tariffs as it was to do with regulations, bureaucracy, and red tape right here in the good old US of A. And see, here's the thing. If he were reducing regulations massively in addition to the tariffs, I might say, okay, I don't like them, but I think there's a much better chance that they do bring manufacturing back. But if all you're doing is just implementing the tariffs, I'm not sure that really moves the needle for manufacturers. I mean, would you? I mean, think about it. If you've got the exact same amount of red tape today, or you're predicting that you're going to have the exact same amount of red tape, or maybe more, over the next 4 years that you had over the last 4 years, but yet Trump just put a 54% tariff on China. I mean, is that really? I mean, maybe. I guess it depends on what you're selling, right? But for a lot of producers, you're gonna be like, no, it doesn't really. my risks are still the same. And in the cost for me to produce that factory, the billions and billions of dollars, that hasn't changed. Now, if you slap a tariff on China, which might be one of my competitors for one of my products, and you're telling me that you're reducing bureaucracy and red tape regulations to the point where it's now going to cost me half of what it was going to cost me to set up this factory, and my risk for liability moving forward because of litigation or whatever it is greatly reduced. Okay, now that's a different equation. Now I'm listening. Now you've got my attention. And if you're someone that's like, oh, well, we don't have that many regulations. I would challenge you to go ahead and try to build a house. Try to build an apartment complex. And you get back to me as far as how many rules and regulation. In fact, try to do that in California. But it's not even California. It's not even a blue state. Try to do it in Texas, right? I mean, I'm really good friends with Kenny McElroy, and he's in the trenches with this stuff daily. And it would blow your mind. I mean, just the broad stroke statistics that we went over the other day with that whiteboard video. I think we discussed it on this channel as well. 23.8% of the cost of a house is regulation. 40% cost to build multifamily apartment buildings. 40% of the cost, regulation. So just think what the cost would be. And that's just the upfront regulations that you have to deal with. Just think what the cost would be to do business with all the regulations. If you wanted to set up a shoe factory, let's say in North Carolina or something like that. You see, this is why I harp on it so much, because if we really, really, really want to give the advantage to American producers, or if we really, really want to incentivize foreign direct investment to come in and make these factories here, to create these manufacturing jobs, we're going to get a lot more bang for our buck by reducing the bureaucracy, as opposed to just making China's imports more expensive, or just effectively by raising taxes on the consumer and giving them less choice, right? That's really kind of the essence of what's going on. So I won't beat a dead horse, but that's kind of my position on this. And if you disagree with me, great. Let me know in the chat. I'm open to being wrong, right? And I'm open to new arguments that maybe I haven't thought of before. So getting back to the legend himself, the legend in his own mind. In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order, reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple. Can't get any simpler than that. Yeah, actually you can, because to actually calculate the tariffs is incredibly complex, as well as to manage the tariffs, incredibly complex. Josh, can you do me a favor before I forget? Can you pull up my Twitter feed? Because there's an example of what we're going to have to deal with here in the United States with these tariffs. It's not so cut and dry where you just say, oh, it's a 54% tariff on China. He's got a lot of carve outs, which I think we have to think through and ask ourselves, what are the ramifications for this, not just with potential corruption, but also how many bodies are we going to need to manage the tariffs, and just to determine what on earth is going on, what's coming, what's going. Is that the tariff tweet that I have regarding the beer? It is. Can you just blow that up? That's as big as we got. Okay, perfect. Thanks. So we're going to get right back to Zero Hedge in a moment, but just to give you guys some food for thought here. This is just a very a couple paragraphs here from CNBC, them discussing kind of what's going on with imports of beer. Now, I don't know what country this applies to, or if it's just all beer, but Josh, blow that up, please, so I can read it. Thanks. One of the two product tariff codes referenced in the notice applies to beer made from malt. Okay. The other applies to aluminum casks, drums, cans, boxes, and similar containers with a capacity no greater than 20 liters. So if it's greater than 20 liters, I guess it doesn't apply. The notice does not include a separate code that would encompass beer in glass containers. You see where I'm going with this, right? If Trump is going to do tariffs, dude, just do it across the board. Like I don't like him as an economic policy, but this is insanity. Where you're like, okay, so we've got let's say a 20% tariff on the Eurozone, but if the beer is coming over and it's in a glass bottle, well, then it's applicable to a different tariff. Then it's a 5% tariff. But if the glass bottle is green, then it's a 7.5% tariff. Now, is the beer malt? Because if it's not malt, I don't know if all beers are malt, but I'm assuming they're not. If it's not malt, then it's a 15.3% tariff. Now, how big was the container that it was shipped on? Was that over 20 liters? And how are we measuring this? You can imagine them at the port where all this is coming in. And how like logistically, how are you even going to do that? Like you're going to measure this and measure and weigh that and weigh this. I mean, how many government employees are we going to have to hire? And these government employees, you know damn well they're going to be bottom of the barrel. I mean, no offense, government employees, but they're going to be DMV workers. So how efficient are they going to be at determining what's coming and what's going? Right? And there's going to need to be redundancy on top of redundancy on top of redundancy. And it's going to create even more bureaucracy, right? And then it's also, think about the malinvestment and misallocation of resources. Josh, can you pull that up real quick again, please? Just the blurb from CNBC. Thanks. So, and keep in mind, guys, this is just for beer. Think about the thousands, the millions of different categories of goods that are imported into the United States on a daily basis. And I hope it's not as complex as the beer, because if it is, I mean, this is a rat maze that would be impossible to untangle, impossible to manage, and impossible to actually uphold. But getting back here, so let's think this through. Let's assume that you are a beer manufacturer in the Eurozone, and you see this. Okay, so what are you going to do? So the first thing I'm going to do, assuming that I might get a bit of a break if my beer was in a glass, is I'm going to change the can. I'm going to change it from a can to a glass. Okay, so why did I have it in a can to begin with? There's some rationale for that, and because I've been producing beer for the last 20 years, so I understand the beer business. And the reason I was producing it in an aluminum can, let's say, was because it was cheaper. Okay, well, why was it cheaper? Because we have more access to that scarce resource with limited uses, right? That's what the price signal was telling us. So I'm now, because that the aluminum doesn't make sense anymore, now I'm going to go ahead and use a higher priced item, which would tell you that it's higher in scarcity, meaning the glass, right? So now I'm taking that scarce resource with alternative uses, and I'm using that phrase purposely because that's the phrase Thomas Sowell uses over and over and over again in the book Basic Economics. So I'm taking this scarce resource with alternative uses, meaning glass, and I'm now using it to put to create the bottles to hold the beer. Okay, but I would have used aluminum, but now it doesn't make sense anymore because of this, let's just say 20% tariff. You see? And so now I'm taking that glass away from another producer that would have had a better use case for it if we were dealing with a free market. See how this stuff works? And what we're doing here is we're interfering with that process. Now, you may say that, well, we have to do this because this is the equivalent of the tariffs. So Trump's point, or Trump's end game here, is to get those other those other countries to reduce their tariffs. So we do live in a free market world. That's a great point. That's a fantastic argument. And I sincerely hope that's what he's doing. If it is, I might be able to get behind it. But what I'm doing is just giving you my analysis and giving you things to think about, assuming that these tariffs are just strictly taking him at his word, which I probably shouldn't do, but just taking him at his word, in that these tariffs are strictly or specifically meant to bring manufacturing back to the United States. Okay. So now let's get back, and that's just one example, right? Like I was saying earlier, just think of the millions of products that are imported, and we've got carve outs for this, carve outs for that. It's just, I said on Twitter, in fact, that I hope Doge gets going, because they're going to need to fire a lot of people to make up for the amount of people that Trump, government employees, that Trump is going to hire in order to somehow micromanage all these tariffs and all these goods that are coming in with all this completely haphazard approach to the tariffs. And then, by the way, what happens if we hire all of these government employees and then 2 weeks later we say, oh, no, actually there's no more tariffs on beer. Now there's tariffs on whiskey, and there's tariffs on this. And oh my goodness gracious, this is going to be, forgive my French, guys. And if there's any kids listening, make sure you do the earmuffs, but there's no other way to describe it. This is going to be a shit show inside of a dumpster fire, I can assure you. And my prediction is that for every one employee Elon Musk fires through Doge, Trump is going to hire 5 more employees just to manage all of these, this tariff insanity. And then think about the corruption that is going to happen as at the border. I mean, I see it all the time. And by the way, that's why we got rid of the tariffs to begin with in the early 1900s, because they led to so much corruption within the government that we actually decided, or they or whoever decided, that an income tax would be better because it would lead to less corruption within the government. And back then, my guess is the tariffs were far more simple, 1,000 times more simple than the tariff barrage we're getting here on Liberation Day. All right, let's get back to the details here. Trump lays out his theory that tariffs will bring back a golden age for the United States. And again, people have a very difficult time doing this on both the left and the right. You have to differentiate between the intent of the policy and the result of the policy, because often they're the opposite. So what people always assume is that if the intent of the tariff is to do this, well, then this is exactly what's going to happen. And if you're against the tariffs, then you're against manufacturing in the United States. But what I would encourage people to do with everything, not just this, is don't conflate the intent of a policy, whether it's on the left or the right, with the result of the policy. Anyway, getting back to it, jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country. And if they do, great, fantastic. I'll be the first person to pat them on the back and say, good job, buddy, I was wrong. But again, we're going to do, we'd have to do a cost benefit analysis. We'd have to do on net, right? But the cool thing about this is it's not like the war on terror or something like that, where it's totally unquantifiable. This is something that we are going to be able to quantify and determine, did this work? as far as just looking at this specifically, or did it not? We'll be able to look at manufacturing jobs. Easy peasy. Finally, Trump announces his tariff plan details as a declaration of economic independence. We went over that. Specifically, Trump announced baseline tariff rate of 10% for all countries, below the 15% consensus and 20% worst case. Okay, here we go. Good. Thank you, Zero Hedge, for pointing this out. This is beginning April 5th. There we go. Looks like all of them. Trump confirmed the 25% tariff on all auto imports, but specific reciprocal tariffs for bad actors starting April 9th. And again, how you determine a bad actor, who knows? Additionally, Trump said they will not be full reciprocal tariffs, then held a chart up showing an individual nation of tariff levels. Okay. Oh, here's the full list. So I thought it was 54%. Why is this showing 67? Oh, I see. This is the tariff charged to the United States. I don't know how they're coming up with this number. And if they are reciprocal tariffs, why are we not tariffing them the same? Like if it is 67%, why are we not tariffing them 67%? I thought that was the whole point. Maybe I'm not fully understanding this chart. Oh, geez. Look at this. This is going to be a complete nightmare. I mean, I would encourage any of you watching right now, if I just told you, okay, your new job is to manage this and and so every shipping container that is now coming into the United States, it's your job to set up a team of people and to micromanage this process and determine what should be paid and what is being paid and collect on that. Where would you start? Personally, I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. In fact, let me just out of curiosity, how many shipping, this is what I'm Googling, how many shipping containers come into the U.S. daily? Oh, only around 91,605. Well, that's good. So basically 100,000. 100,000. All righty then. So we've got 100,000 shipping containers coming in from all of these countries with millions of different goods. Each one of these goods potentially having a different tariff based on whether it's glass or aluminum. Okay. Oh, the list just keeps going and going and going, doesn't it? Wow. I mean, it just keeps going. Oh, well, thank goodness we've got a 10% reciprocal tariff on Svalbard and Jan Mayen. What? are we targeting Jan specifically? You got some gal in Europe that were like, for you, Jan, you're getting an extra 10%. Oh my goodness gracious. All right. I mean, you guys know my thoughts. I put the probability of this ending well, assuming these tariffs stay in place, let's just say for the next 3-4 years that Trump is in office. I see the it's not a zero probability. Obviously, no certainties, only probabilities. But I would put the probability of this being a net positive, even on manufacturing jobs. Just looking at it, just looking at that specific isolated industry or portion of the labor market, I put an extremely low probability that this is a net positive, but I'll be the first person to admit if I'm wrong. And again, the really cool thing about it is I think Fred even has a chart here. So let's see, I can't even spell here. Manufacturing jobs, Fred. Here we go. Cool. And I know what you guys are going to say. Well, this is what we need to get back to the United States. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I'm not saying we don't need to bring manufacturing jobs back. I'm just saying I'm skeptical as to whether or not this, the S show in a dumpster fire is going to get the job done. I think it would be far more effective to reduce the old bureaucracy and regulations. But there you go. So we'll be able to just monitor it this way. And if over the next 4 years, if this goes, straight up, I mean, even if it goes back up to where it was in 2000, or I think that's a huge win. That would be a huge win, a huge win. But again, we'd have to say, okay, what were the trade-offs? But just looking at this in a vacuum, this alone, I think I would take my hat off to Trump and say you were right, at least in this specific area. But I think the probability of that's extremely low. Okay, let's get back to zero hedge. So this is what happened to, I believe, the markets. So the futures market just tanked. Yields tumbled. Wow. Yields got down to almost 4.1 on the 10-year. So it's not just George Gammon saying that I'm concerned from an economic standpoint. It's the market. I mean, it's the stock market, it's the bond market. It's maybe we're all wrong. I hope so. Well, here you go. Here's some good news. So this is from who is this from? Well, let's just read. Okay, this is Adam Hetz, global head of multi-asset at Janus Henderson, suggests this is the opening salvo for negotiations. And the question is how much economic pain Trump is willing to tolerate. Eye-watering tariffs on country-by-country basis scream negotiating tactic. Okay. I hope it is. I hope it is. But I sure hope we can negotiate these things very, very quickly before this leads to some massive disruption that is going to have a very substantial negative impact on the U.S. economy, at least over the short run. So now Trump discussed reciprocal tariffs. Okay, keep in mind this chart. Does that seem like free trade? No, it doesn't. But just because Argentina is doing something stupid, I don't know that we should do it. right? So Argentina is printing money and producing hyperinflation. Does that mean that we should do it? Because hey, look, how can we compete when the Argentinian peso is worth so much less than the dollar? That gives them a huge manufacturing advantage. See? Okay, the Make America Well, okay, Trump just boasting about how great he is. Okay, that's fine. Probably would be entertaining though. All right, so now let's go over to markets and see what exactly is going on. Because when I first came onto the live stream, I read a headline saying that the futures market was down 700, but then we saw that just as we went live saying that it was down 900. So I'm not really sure what exactly is going on here. Let's go back over to CNBC and see if we can figure it out. Oh, Dow futures down now 1,000 points. Okay. And this is another concern. So, what are the chances these other countries just sit back and are like, okay, yeah, we'll take it. Maybe. And, what are the chances that they reduce their tariffs? I hope that's what they do. But there's also a substantial possibility they say, okay, F you. You want to put a 20% tariff on us? We'll put an additional 20% tariff on you. And then what does Trump do? Just keep upping it and upping it and upping it until the point where we're just not trading goods and services back and forth at all? And if you say, yeah, that would be great. So then everyone will have to buy American. Be very, very careful what you wish for. Because just remember how much stuff is produced right now in the United States. A very low amount. And you can't just change that with a light switch, just flipping it on and off. Like, okay, today, let's say 50% of the tennis shoes are made in Vietnam. Well, tomorrow, we're just going to produce those tennis shoes right here in the United States. It doesn't work that way. No matter how bad you want it to work that way, that's not reality. Now, can we produce those shoes in the United States in the future? Probably, but that's going to take a lot of time to create and build those factories, to hire those workers, to train those people. That doesn't happen in a year or two. That might happen in 5 years or so. So what we've got to understand is there's going to be a hell of a lot fewer shoes. And by the way, I would be very curious to know if you go to a Foot Locker, how many of those shoes are produced in the United States? My guess is almost none. So if this trade war escalates, now all of a sudden you're going to go to Foot Locker and it's going to be like going to a grocery store during the cerveza sickness. There ain't going to be anything there. You're going to be like, okay, well, it's going to benefit the people that are producing in the United States. Okay. Yep. We're going to have winners and losers. I totally agree. But for the vast majority of Americans, they're going to be losers because they're going to be paying way more for tennis shoes. And they're going to have, 5% of the options, let's say. Again, I hope I'm wrong. We'll have to see how this plays out. And then it is true that maybe, just maybe, especially if we reduce regulation in 5 years, then maybe we would have supply of tennis shoes, just using that as an example, coming back online to where we would go to Foot Locker and all those tennis shoes would be made in the United States and we would have maybe 50% of the options that we have today. Hopefully. I think that would probably be a best case scenario. U.S. stock futures cratered as President Donald Trump unveiled sweeping tariffs. Okay, we got that. Dow futures lost 1,000 points or 2.7. S&P down 3.4%. Eesh, the NASDAQ down 4.2. Yikes. All right, well, hopefully maybe this is just a knee-jerk reaction. I'm trying to look at the bright side here. This is just a futures market. Maybe it's a knee-jerk reaction. Maybe by the time the market opens tomorrow, we'll be right back to the levels where we close the day. or maybe we'll be down even further. There's always that possibility. Okay, shares of multinational companies tumbled. Yeah, see, this is where I doubt this is a knee-jerk reaction, because this makes a lot of sense when you're seeing these types of tariffs that impact huge companies like Nike, Apple, each dropped about 7%. Shares of big sellers of imported goods, a Five Below, not sure what that is. Dollar Tree tumbled 11%. Yeah, I don't know how you would argue that that snaps back tomorrow, but who knows? Maybe this is a good news is bad news, or excuse me, bad news is good news because this increases the probability of the Fed dropping rates. Remember, 10-year Treasury is down massively. And to me, that's even more important than what's going on in the stock market. We'll have to get to that in just a moment here. Okay, then Trump kind of goes on and on and on here. Got it. So now that I mentioned the bond market, let's go over there and see what is happening, not just with the 10-year Treasury, but also what is happening with the 2-year. And I want to see the CME. I don't know if that's updated in real time. I'm not sure, but if it is, I want to see what the odds are and how they've changed for rate cuts throughout the rest of 2025, or at least the next couple meetings. So starting off right here, we've got the 10-year Treasury down to currently 4.12. Big move down. And again, I actually did an interview on Jeff's channel, Dan Snyder's. I think that's going to come out on Saturday. We had a fantastic conversation. You guys are going to want to watch that for sure. But we discuss, why growth and inflation expectations are really what moves the long end of the curve. And it's not so much about supply. It's not really at all about supply as far as the treasury market. And you can see what has happened. But in every single cycle, there's a lot of noise. And we go over that on this channel all the time with the 2007, 2008 cycle, where the 10-year treasury yield from March to July went up by 100 basis points. And then, of course, it came crashing down and inflation went up. I mean, it was the same stagflationary story that you hear today. I'm not saying that it plays out the exact same this time, but we have seen this before where the results have been disinflationary and obviously a severe recession and interest rates going down a lot further than they were even during the middle of the actual recession when the NBER made the final official announcement. But we see what they've been doing, and I'm talking about the 10-year over the last pretty much since Trump was inaugurated. Since inauguration, it's just pretty much straight down. We went from 4.8 down to 4.12 where we are today. And this obviously inverts the curve between the front end and the Fed funds and the 10-year even more. Now the curve's inverted by 20 basis points. Now let's look at the 2-year treasury because the Fed always follows the 2-year. So we can kind of get a read on, or a better read as to what the Fed might do, a better read than the 10-year. So right now, actually, before we go over there, let's go to this. And do they have the 2-year? They do not, unfortunately. So let's just go over to Market Watch and do 2-year. Okay. And we are at, okay. Last updated 6:40 p.m. Eastern time. Surprising. I don't know if this, this would have had to have been during the tariffs. It was probably what happened is it went way up and then it came way down with the tariffs. But I would have thought, I mean, this is right around where we were this morning at 3.86. Based on the action of the stock market and based on the action of the 10-year, I would have thought the 2-year treasury would have been sub 3.8. So this is really interesting. I'm really going to be curious to see how this opens up tomorrow. So on this note, I don't think if it is updated in real time, that FedWatch really should have changed much as far as the probabilities of rate cut or pause over the next couple meetings, which that one has not changed. That's the May 7th meeting. And if my memory serves me right, this might have increased a little bit, the probability of a 25 basis point cut in June 18th. Now, also, let's go over the dollar, guys. We can't forget about that. That's extremely important as well. So let's do market watch DXY. My guess is that it ripped higher. There you go. Did the opposite. This is another one that I'm going to be watching like a hawk tomorrow, because I would be very surprised that after the market kind of digests this, the market would not be, or excuse me, the dollar index would not be higher, especially when you got 20% tariff on the Eurozone. In other words, the euro, and the euro is like 57% of the DXY. One more thing that I wanted to go over on the freedom and liberty front today, guys. This is the back end of my YouTube channel. So what I do is everything is under George Gammon, and I have the George Gammon whiteboard channel, as you guys probably know. I've got this channel, the Rebel Capitalist channel, and then I've got the Rebel Capitalist interviews. But I also have dubbed accounts for multiple languages for the whiteboard videos and for these live streams. So I've got George Gammon Russia, George Gammon Hindi, George Gammon Mandarin. And what we do is we just take the raw footage of the whiteboard as an example, and we just put it into HeyGen, which is an AI deal. And then it comes back where I'm speaking Russian or French perfectly, or Spanish as an example. And it even changes the lips. It's really, the technology is fantastic. But you guys know that on this channel, I really kind of give you my down and dirty opinion. But on the whiteboards, I really don't do that too much, a little bit here and there. But on the whiteboards, I'm mainly just explaining economic policies. So look at this. Actually, you know what I'll do? So Josh, hide it for a second. I'm going to go straight to my email, and I'm just going to reveal the actual email I got today from YouTube. Okay, you can go ahead and do the screen share. So can you see this, Josh?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Hi, George Gammon, George Gammon Russia channel, or Russian. We have reviewed your content. Keep in mind, guys, these are the whiteboard videos. This is only the whiteboard videos. We have reviewed your content and found severe or repeated violations of our misinformation policy. Because of this, we have removed your channel from YouTube. So then what I did is I obviously disputed this. I did an appeal, and then within a couple minutes of doing an appeal, where it should have gone to a human being, I get another email from YouTube. We have reviewed your appeal for the following. We reviewed your channel carefully. Oh, did you? And have confirmed that it violates our misinformation policy. We know this is probably disappointing news, but it's our job to make sure that YouTube is a safe place for all. So thank you, YouTube. In fact, you guys should probably just go on Twitter and @mention YouTube and thank them for saving you from potentially watching one of my whiteboard videos on economics? I mean, basically, we've gotten to the point here on YouTube where I guess if you have any view on I forget the cerveza sickness, forget the different wars that we have going on right now, forget politics. If you have a view on economics that is out of the mainstream or outside of the mainstream view, you are now potentially spreading misinformation based on their definition. I mean, this is the insanity that we're dealing with. And if you want to get a little conspiratorial, which I think we are completely justified, you have to ask yourself, why did they remove the Russian speaking channel? That was it. Remember, I've got the whiteboard channels that are dubbed. So if it was simply just me dubbing it, then obviously that would have impacted the George Gammon Spanish channel, where the whiteboards are dubbed into Spanish or French or Hindi or Mandarin. Nope. The only one that was removed was Russian. Why? I'll let you be the judge. But it seems, at the very least, suspicious. And on that bombshell, guys, you've got to get your tickets to Rebel Capitalist Live, not just to hear from the speakers, but to network with your fellow Rebel Capitalists, because, you know, this whole world is getting so insane. And we're going to get to a point where we might, well, I hate to be hyperbolic, but we could get to a point where the only opportunity we have to actually be honest and to speak the truth and to explore ideas that may be outside of the mainstream is going to be face to face. That's the direction the world is going, unfortunately. So thank goodness I'm still doing this event and that we can still meet face to face and have these extremely important discussions. But this is going to be Orlando, May 23rd through the 25th. And you guys can go there, check out the speakers. And I hope to see you there, because especially, you know, even with Trump in office, even with Doge, even with everything, the technocrats, you know, big tech, the big tech industrial, the big, the censorship industrial complex, it's still growing. It's still a huge, huge problem. And it's something that we're going to need to deal with moving forward. And like I said, you know, thank goodness we still have these live events. I mean, who knows in the future if, you know, I'm going to try to do an event at the hotel that we've been using for, let's say, the past couple of years without a problem, and I'm just going to get a notification that they're no longer willing to do business with me. Why? Because they don't want to distance themselves from that person that's spreading all this misinformation on YouTube or on the internet. Might not happen with Trump in office, but the next president, let's say the next president's Kamala Harris, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. So anyway, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. As always, make sure you are standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism, and freedom of speech. And if you want to get your tickets to Rebel Capitalist Live, you can go to rebelcapitalistlive.com. We'll see you on the next video.